Join the conversation with the Morning Majlis, Pulse 95.
Yep, join the conversation with the Morning Majlis, and we are celebrating all things coffee, all things passion, what we're passionate about, and coffee is something that really unites a lot of us. In the UAE, we've got the Arabic coffee, the qahwa that we drink, and we love going to specialty coffees. Go down Mawele in Sharjah, you'll find loads of coffee shops. Go down Jumeirah Beach Road, coffee shops everywhere. It's great. Now, let's get this all, let's break it all down and understand the different types of coffees out there, and what does it mean by single origin coffee or an artisan coffee or a specialty coffee. So to talk to us about this, we've got Kim Thompson, who is the managing director and founder of Raw Coffee, who's joined us very kindly this morning. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, great to hear from you, Kim. Now, let's start off by talking about coffee, single origin coffee. You've got the V60s. You've got this artisan coffee. What is this all about? What are the different coffee that we see here in the UAE?
I think the first thing I would like to say is that it shouldn't be restrictive or make you feel nervous about going into a coffee shop. You should go in there and just, if you don't know what a V60 is, that's fine, just ask, because it's something that you've got to be aware of, is that the owners and the baristas love talking coffee. So they love guiding you and helping you on that journey. And if you are someone that likes to buy coffee from Starbucks and it's or Costa or something, and it's a long latte or something like that with decaf, low-fat milk, that's fine. It's your choice. Mm-hmm. But if you want to experiment and try different coffees, the baristas or the waiting staff or the owners would happily guide you on that journey.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Can you elaborate on that guiding process as well? Because we've talked about, you're going into a market where people have a certain sensibility and a way they drink coffee as well. How do you sort of get people to get into this specialty coffee without being too imposing about it or overbearing?
Yeah, I think that's the problem at the moment, because it's a growing trend, and there are a lot of new players that are really excited and passionate, and it can be quite intimidating. It shouldn't be intimidating. I think we like to ask people what they like, and you might like chocolate and nuts, and you might like citrusy, vibrant complexity. There's nothing right or wrong. It's what you like. So you have lots different origins. So an origin means the country that the coffee comes from. But within an origin, let's say Rwanda or Colombia, there are different varietals of coffee that have different flavors, and you can compare that to an apple or a bit of meat or anything. And so it's a process there that you should be guided through with regard to what you like, and then we try and find a flavour that we can go, oh yeah, it sounds like you're really going to like the Mexican, because it's got low acidity, it's really chocolatey and nutty, and it won't be too over the top for you. But a lot of people still add milk, so when you add milk, the coffee changes completely as well. So it's just a process of asking a few guided questions and going, look, try this. And then if you have a roastery, you can bring people in and make them a cup of coffee so that they could understand what they're going to expect when they get the coffee home.
Okay. Now, a lot of people go down to these specialty coffees, and it's just, the word is just thrown around. Everyone can start off a coffee shop and say, we're specialty coffee. So my question to you is, what is specialty coffee, firstly? And then when you go into these stores, you see there's beans from Costa Rica, Brazil, Ethiopia, Rwanda, as you pointed out. And a normal consumer would be thinking, why source it from all these countries? What difference does it taste? It's just a bean that gets crushed and roasted, and then we're drinking coffee. But to explain to them about what and how these different countries, or why is it important to import from these different countries?
Okay, so specialty coffee is not really even pegged or compared to commodity coffee. So at the moment, most people know that there is a coffee exchange in New York, and there's pricing and there's futures trading and all that sort of thing. Specialty coffee is very niche, and it's coffee where it's scored out of 100 points that scores over 80. But what's really interesting is that, like, we as a company don't buy anything that's under 84. So the price of the coffee that we buy is more expensive because the quality of it's so much better. So you could compare that to, again, you could say steak, where you have different ranges of meat that you use for different types of cooking. You have cars that are one brand, let's say Toyota, but you have a Yaris and a Lexus. And they're completely different. They're still cars that take fuel, use fuel and take passengers from A to B.
Right.
Specialty coffee is more expensive as a product for us to buy when it's a raw ingredient. And then it's the way that we approach the sourcing, the roasting, the grading, and then we care about the baristas so they earn more money and they're a profession and a skill in how they make it. You can't just open a bag of coffee not knowing what you're doing and grind it properly, for example. So it's an industry that we're really into, obviously, but the farmers, they pick the coffee by hand. It's grown at high altitude. It's not in a place like Vietnam or Brazil where there's a big machine that comes through and automatically picks it and puts it all together. So one tree can have different grades of coffee that are separated, and then they're processed in a different way. So it's a super cool industry when you get into it. And the different countries might grow the same varietal. Like everybody knows now about a varietal called geisha, but there are different varietals that grow that have all the different flavors, but they have to cope with the different weather conditions and the different altitudes and sunshine and soil types. So it's a very niche but growing industry.
It sounds like quite a challenging industry as well, especially at the time we're in. For example, you got to source the coffee from these different places. It's quite labor intensive. Can you shed some light on the challenges of running this type of business?
Sourcing the coffee is the best part of the industry because it's the most fun. You get to travel. Like the last 2 years have been sad and challenging, but it's been sad and challenging for everybody. But I think we have long relationships with the farms and the producers and the processors of the coffee that we're buying, and they've become friends. So we've got a really long, drawn-out supply chain, but starting from the farmer to the people that process the coffee for us, going all the way through to the baristas and the customer, it's a very tight-knit supply chain. So we've been able to look after our suppliers, and we've been on Zoom, and we've still had no breakage in our continuity. But we've had to acknowledge that they've had their own, incredibly difficult challenges. They're very vulnerable because it's hardly even a sustainable industry for them. So we've moved from things like organic certifications to direct trade. So we buy directly from our farm gate. And there's a lot of innovation happening in our industry at the moment with traceability and provenance and everything, which is super cool because the consumers care. So we're able to share the story a lot more about the exact farms, farmers, and people that are growing the coffee. And consumers want to know that. They want to feel connected.
Can you elaborate on that? Also the innovation side of it. You noted
we're working on a project at the moment that we're really excited about, which is going to be very dynamic, and it's going to be able to show a consumer exactly where their coffee comes from.
Wow.
And trace it when it leaves the tree to the processing farm gate. You're going to see where the value is added, and I think remove all of the extenuous, unnecessary brokers and traders that are not adding value to the farmer or to the end consumer.
Okay.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. Right, now, obviously, we've seen the globe is going through some challenges. Transportation costs have gone, costs of productions are increasing, inflation is out there, people are less willing to spend or trying to cut down on their unnecessary or leisurely expenditures, which could fall into a cup of coffee every day. That could be under the radar. How do you manage the inflationary pressure of the pressure that your producer and your supplier is facing? Cost of rent and cost of staff and the cost of transporting them, they're obviously rising at the moment. So for a coffee industry expert, how is this are the pressures being felt?
I think we believe, and we're lucky, that coffee isn't a luxury.
Okay.
Coffee is something that, if you like coffee, you're still going to find the money to drink it.
Right.
But we're seeing a shift in that maybe a consumer that might have purchased a cup of coffee in a cafe has now, since COVID, they have had the time and the luxury to learn their own ritual and how they're going to make it at home. So they've really dived deep into it, and they're buying bags of coffee now instead of cups of coffee. And that for us is really good because it's like, I suppose, like they've learned how to make their own sourdough and their own banana bread and all that sort of thing. But it means once they've tried making it and they've realised that they can save money by making it at home, they've started diving into the quality of water, grind size, and they've played and they've realised that they can save money, but they can also make a better product at home than a lot of what they were buying regularly in a cafe. So we haven't lost customers, but what we've seen is our online sales to people like you at home have gone through the roof, and then we've had to learn and be dynamic because we almost broke because we couldn't get the coffee. Increasing our online sales by 400%. We were all out being delivery drivers, and and trying to ensure that the coffee reached the customer within the 24-hour period that we promised. And so there were a lot of really massive challenges that we went through. But now we've got them all sorted, and we've found logistics partners that we trust and like. And we did a lot of online trainings to encourage people, and we tried to also not restrict or exclude people that didn't have the money to own their own espresso machines, because that's a big investment. So hand brewing became very trendy and popular, and we love that because then people buy single origin coffees and they care and they look at the roast levels and the roast dates, and there's hand grinders that are really easy to purchase that are good quality. And then we also developed a product that is like a infusion bag, so that people could just do that as well without having a grinder. So we had to try and look at all the different demographics, and this is a culture of people that drink coffee anyway.
Yeah.
So you weren't trying to teach them something new. It was just changing them from an Arabic style to a more international version.
And Kim, I'm interested in your journey as well. Like, how did you get into all of this?
Oh, I just fell into it.
How did that work?
Honestly, I just fell into it. I am a mother. My children were getting older. I started we sailed in Dubai and at an old, British sailing club called Jebel Ali Sailing Club, and we used to camp there all the time. And I was on the committee, and we were trying to find a good food solution, and I have a big mouth, so I put my hand up and I started doing the cafe there, and I couldn't find good coffee. Everything was imported, and in New Zealand we were used to owner-operated local, like they like doing their own things in New Zealand. So when the Dubai Marina was built, the sailing club was demolished, and I had time, so I had family and friends back in New Zealand that were roasting, and I thought I would try it.
Nice.
Purely, that's how it started.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So now the big question is, what's your favorite type of coffee? What kind of coffee will we find on your coffee table on a regular day? And how many cups of coffee do you personally prefer? And how many cups of coffee is it okay to drink?
That's personal. You can drink whatever you like. I think I don't drink as much coffee as my business partner or a lot of the people on my team. And my coffee journey personally has gone through stages. I think a lot of people start with a latte, and then they might move to a cappuccino, and then they go to a double shot flat white. I don't really like milk. And in the early days, we started 15 years ago, there wasn't oat milk. And, it was sort of soya milks, and I was worried about the estrogens and stuff with that. So my favourite coffee at the moment is a V60. I like a hot V60, not an iced V60. I think that's really popular at the moment, an iced V60. I only drink 3 cups of coffee a day, and very embarrassingly, I start my day in the roastery by drinking a cup of tea.
Oh,
so
wow.
I have to sneak, and I'm really, it's like I have my mask mask on and I'm sort of sneaking in. And it depends what mood I'm in, because we're buying a lot of really experimental coffees in smaller volumes at the moment that are rare, that are using different fermentations, anaerobics, they're using different fruits. And so if I feel like that, I will have something really funky. But I really love Ethiopian coffees, and we have a really beautiful Colombian coffee that's just really mainstream, that's in some of our blends, that never fails to please. And then we have a shipment coming in very soon that we haven't had for a long time from Mexico, and that's a really beautiful washed coffee that I'm really excited about, that is something that I missed having. So it just depends. I'm really lucky. You can go down. It's like if you're having a sandwich, you don't usually have the same thing. You switch it up. So I always
have the same sandwich every day.
Do you? Yeah. Well, that's really funny too, because we have customers that are they have the same coffee, the same seat, the same time, and they like the same barista.
There you go.
And then we have different experimental people that say, what should I have today? What should I try? So, yeah, it's fun.
Right. Okay. This is very interesting. So now I'd like to take an overall picture. You say that you've been here for 25 years. Comparing our coffee consumption to the rest of the world and our, let's say, interest and knowledge about the world of coffee, how do we fare and how do we compare to the rest of the world? Are we like an international coffee destination, or are we catching up?
I believe we've caught up.
Okay.
I think and I'm a New Zealander, so it's really painful for me to say this, but Melbourne leads the world in coffee. I think London is very exciting and vibrant with their coffee scene. San Francisco, there are places that we travel to if we're trying to keep up with international trends that we look at. But I think the UAE has definitely caught up, and that's because there are so many cafes, and so the people have the time, they have the money, and they have the passion to really get into it. And that we're international, travelers here. Even the local community, they travel and they go to cafes that they want to learn from, and then they bring that back, that experience, and they demand that quality back here. So I think we've caught up. I think the UAE, Saudi Arabia is catching up. I think things that are different here are that people don't necessarily go to walk past a cafe and grab a takeaway and walk with it to go somewhere. They go and sit.
Yeah.
And they might drink more than one. And they'll have a cafe they like going to before work or for their morning break, and then they'll have one they go to with their friends when they finish work, and they'll sit for a long time, and then and they might have an espresso or double espresso, but later on they might order whatever they feel, like a hand poured coffee or a flat white or something, and it is really a ritual that they have, and they have their favorites.
Amazing. Well, there's so much to learn and so much to take away from this conversation. Kim Thompson, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a wonderful discussion about the world of coffee, and we'd love to hear more from you, and good luck with your journey of the roastery.
Thank you
as well.
so much.
Well, we were listening to Kim Thompson, who is the managing director and founder of Raw Coffee. And if you'd like to catch this discussion as a podcast, you can do so on YouTube and Spotify, as well as SoundCloud and Apple Podcast. We'll be back after the 9 o'clock news headlines. You're listening to the Morning Majlis only on Pulse 95.
If you liked this episode of the Morning Majlis, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.
Pulse.